Do you think the earth is the one that moves, or is it the sun that revolves around the earth? Do not dismiss this question, and do not immediately jump in and say, "Of course the earth revolves around the sun." If you had been living in early modern Europe, you would not have been able to say this so comfortably. In fact, most likely, you would not even have dared to express it so openly, because in that period, let alone saying such a thing, even letting the thought cross your mind meant being accused of heresy, and the punishment for that accusation was, very likely, death. So come, let us look together at what history is about to tell us. Some people risked even death in their search for the truth. With their intelligence, their courage, and their inventions, they changed the direction of humanity's compass. Today, we will look at one of the men who paid that price, Galileo Galilei. If someone among us stood up today and said, "The earth is not actually moving, it stands still at the center of the universe," what would happen? We would probably just call him crazy and move on, right? But what if we heard this from a nationally recognized scientist? In the 17th century, the situation was exactly the opposite. In the Catholic world, the accepted view was this: the earth was at the center of the universe. The earth was motionless. Everything in the universe, including the sun, revolved around the earth. This understanding was defended either through Aristotle's geocentric model or through Tycho Brahe's system that blended the sun and the earth together. And in that century, a man emerged and said, "The earth is not actually fixed." That sentence was one of the most dangerous sentences that could be spoken in early modern Europe, and to say those words required truly serious courage. Now let us get to know this courage. Galileo Galilei, who was born on February 15th, 1564, in the city of Pisa, Italy, was the eldest son of the Florentine nobleman Vincenzo Galilei. The city where Galileo was born, Pisa, was famous for its 500-year history and for the symbol you would encounter everywhere, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Galileo opened his eyes to the world in that unparalleled era known as the Renaissance. This was a time when art and science were being reborn in Europe. Shakespeare, Michelangelo, Copernicus, Leonardo da Vinci, Descartes, Montaigne. They all lived in the same era as Galileo, and each of them left a lasting mark on human history. Galileo was the first child of his family. Although his mother and father had noble family ties, this did not mean their wealth was secure. His father, Vincenzo Galilei, was a musician. He sang, played the lute, composed music, and gave lessons. At the same time, he wrote books that included topics on music theory. But some of these books caused problems, because Vincenzo did not hesitate to question the so-called unchangeable rules of music. At one point, he found a good position as a musician at the royal court. After spending some time in Pisa, Galileo later joined his family in Florence. At that time, Florence was the center of the Renaissance. It was the main hub of art, science, and free thought. When Galileo turned 11, he was sent to a monastery for his education. There, he learned everything that an educated person in the 1500s was expected to know: Greek, Latin, logic, philosophy. At the same time, he also received religious instruction. In fact, this experience left such a deep mark on him that for a time he even considered becoming a monk. But his father absolutely did not allow it. As the eldest child of the family, he was expected to support them in the future. And so Galileo was taken from the monastery and sent to another school to continue his education. When he turned 17, he was finally ready for university education. At that time, receiving a university education was a privilege granted only to those from wealthy families and noble backgrounds. Despite this reality, Vincenzo wanted his intelligent son to receive the best education possible. In 1581, Galileo enrolled at the University of Pisa. His father wanted him to study medicine, because doctors were respected individuals and earned good money. But Galileo quickly showed that he was different. He had a personality that questioned everything. He enjoyed being involved in debates. For this reason, some of his professors did not like him very much, but others greatly enjoyed his intelligence. His friends described Galileo as sincere, loyal, and generous. While at university, Galileo realized something profound. Nature did not operate randomly. It functioned within a framework of precise laws, and in the years to come he would express his famous words. The universe is written in the language of mathematics. Its letters are triangles, circles, and geometric figures. Without understanding this language, you cannot understand the universe. Galileo was deeply in love with mathematics. One day, while he was inside a cathedral, a massive chandelier hanging from the ceiling caught his attention. It was being repaired. When the worker released the chain, the chandelier began to swing. Galileo measured the duration of each swing by feeling his own pulse. The arc of the swing was shrinking, but the time remained the same. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the chandelier. But Galileo was seeing something different. At just 19 years old, he had discovered the law of the pendulum. This principle would later form the foundation of modern clocks. It would also pave the way for instruments that allowed physicians to measure a patient's pulse. But his passion for mathematics was slowly pulling him away from medicine. In 1585, he left the university without receiving a diploma. He returned home. He began giving lessons in mathematics, and he continued his research without slowing down. He questioned why water caused some objects to sink and why waterfalls always flowed downward. These investigations led him to design a pump system, one that helped farmers irrigate their fields. Another of his inventions was a balance that made use of the buoyant force of water. Goldsmiths loved this device. They were able to measure the ratio of gold and silver with precision. This invention paved the way for Galileo's first book, The Little Balance. His reputation spread rapidly. In 1589, the University of Pisa offered him a position as professor of mathematics. 4 years earlier, Galileo had left the university without a diploma. Now he was returning to the same institution, this time with the title of professor. But he could not remain quiet at the university. He refused to wear the academic robe. He questioned some of Aristotle's ideas. For example, Aristotle had claimed that heavier objects fall faster than lighter ones. Galileo decided to test this. From the Tower of Pisa, he dropped objects of different weights at the same time, and he observed that they struck the ground at nearly the same moment. Today, we understand this clearly. In the absence of air resistance, all objects fall at the same rate. This experiment was even confirmed on the Moon in 1971. To some, Galileo was a troublemaker, but his students loved him. In 1591, when his contract was not renewed, he resigned. His father had died. He had to support his family financially. He received an offer from the University of Padua, but he was so poor that he walked the 160-kilometer journey on foot. Padua felt like heaven to him. There was a spirit of free thought. He remained at the university for 18 years, and he later described those years as the happiest period of his life. During this time, he also experienced love. He had a long relationship with Marina Gamba. They had 2 daughters and a son. They never married, but Galileo never abandoned his family. Then a tragic event struck. He lost his friends to poisonous gas. He survived, but his health was never the same again. His inventions began to earn him money. He invented the military compass. He built one of the earliest versions of the thermometer. But the real turning point came in 1608. He heard about the invention of a Dutch lens maker, the spyglass. Galileo immediately realized it was not a toy. Using this idea, he built his own telescope and improved it. At last, he turned it toward the sky. The moon was not smooth. Its surface had mountains and craters, and he saw the moons orbiting Jupiter. What he had seen was proof that the Earth was not the center of the universe. In 1610, he published his book, The Starry Messenger, and everything changed. The church stood against him, the Inquisition, bans, trial. Galileo was forced to step back. He was sentenced to house arrest, but he did not remain silent. His final book was secretly published in the Netherlands, Dialogues Concerning Two New Sciences, and the world changed. Galileo died in 1642. But his ideas never did. Einstein later said of him, "Galileo is the father of modern physics and of modern science." And yes, the Earth was moving. In truth, it had always been moving, but only one man had the courage to say it aloud.